So welcome. We're the Geek Whisperers. We are the Geek Whisperers. Hello.
Hi, everybody.
Amy Lewis, Matt Brender, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John Mark Troyer.
Welcome to our show.
It's usually a little different than that, but I'll go with this.
I know, secretly, like behind the scenes, I think we should say, I blame Frank Denneman for making us permanently self-conscious when we say our names at the beginning of the show. He's like, you're too slow. You need to speed it up. And so every time we're like, who's going first? So
No.
We're the Geek Whisperers. I'm John Mark Troyer.
I'm Amy Lewis.
And I'm Matt Brender. That's the best.
So we're going to come up. I'm not going to ask. I've been talking all day, so I'm actually going to ask you guys to lead.
And Amy, you had a great way of framing this.
Talk a little bit, about what we've been doing today and what we've been talking about, the Unconference, and we're going to do it Oprah style.
There you go.
Oprah style, yeah. It's going to be the Oprah style Geek Whisperers, so to make everybody part of the podcast. So if you're not a listener, we hope you will be someday, not to make this a relentless advertisement, but we've pivoted in the last year from talking about marketing and some of the things that were interesting to us into career development and growth, because we all had career changes. And we just did an episode with Scott Lowe, and one of his points that I thought was really interesting and we all kind of hopped on was at the end of every episode, we ask people what you would do, what you would never do again. And they have that deer in the headlights moment that I enjoy so thoroughly. And then he said, I would call on the community earlier as part of my career development.
I didn't realize how much my network meant to my career.
There we go. And so in some of the conversations we've had earlier today here at The Reckoning, that seemed to resonate with a lot of people here as well about how they learned and learning from the community and the value of multiple people kind of molding and shaping what you're doing, how to get started, how to transition, how to smooth that safety net that helps us kind of transition, or even helps us dream a little bit differently, think a little bit differently about what's possible.
Yeah, and how to evolve, right? We've really talked about, when we were in the Unconference earlier today, it's a lot of questions of transitioning. How do we transition from X to Y? How do we deal with the transition of our industry from X to Y? These things are both affecting us, and what's always been very interesting and something John's always been passionate about is that in our industry, we're not selling Coca-Cola or Pepsi. We don't have an apathy to the product set in our marketing or our engineering or sales. It's really, we invest all the way through. It will affect our careers forever, what we choose to do today and what we choose to pursue tomorrow. And that's an interesting kind of mutually assured reliance on ideally like creation and success together. So together, like, let's continue to evolve.
Okay.
So I guess on that point, in terms of, we want to hear your story. This is a podcast. Again, this is breaking down the fourth wall here to what some points you have around community, what it's done for your careers, stories you've got, transitional points. So anybody want to lead us off, or I'll come into the audience and help you volunteer, because I'm known for that.
Luigi, I see you holding a microphone, and I'll give you a second to think, because I know I'm going to freak you out with that, but I'm going to ask you to speak. But actually, Luigi is the first person that pushed me to join Twitter, and Twitter was very much the gateway by which I met a majority of the people in this room.
He's like your Twitter sire.
Yeah, I was his Padawan, one might even say. And Luigi's been on his own evolution lately. So Luigi, why don't you tell us a little about what you're up to?
Oh, wow, this thing is loud. So yes, I did have a transition because of social media.
Let's go back a little bit. So we're not Insider Baseball for anybody. Can you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, so my name is Luigi Danikos. I actually work for HP Enterprise now. Currently, I also am on Twitter as NerdBlurt. Most people know me as I've won at least 5 iPads. That seems to be my moniker, is winning stuff.
We call him.
Yes.
That's how I know him. He stood next to me and won.
Yeah,
I've never had the luck kind of rub off on me, but you're just like collecting free technology like nobody's.
It is true. I have won a lot, but I always say it is, as much as I win merchandise, it's the community and the people that I meet which makes me have my NerdBlurt mojo. So as far as my transition, I started many years ago, like at least 10-ish or so, at EMC as a contractor. And then from there, I met Stu Miniman and Gina Minks, and they kind of mentored me into the social space. And then I got involved with my local VMUG, and I was just like, wait, what is this virtualization stuff? Now, I've only been involved in technology, 10 years or so. So I haven't been around as long as many of you, but I got accepted into the community as far as with my local VMUG, and then that expanded out when I went to VMworld and EMC World, and I still say that the Bloggers Lounge of EMC World 2010 has been the best one because of all the connections I've made still to this day. Just because of my social prowess. And no one knows what I know technically, but I've had multiple job offers sent to my Twitter inbox. And it's insane. And for the longest time, a lot of people thought I was a V specialist because I hung around with all the V specialists, and they just said, "Oh, you're a V specialist." I said, "No, I don't even work for EMC." So it was kind of funny that they see that. And I met Matthew Brender and Amy and John all because of my social networks. And now Matt, my kids call him Uncle Matt. So it goes to show that people that you don't realize influence your lives. And I transitioned now. I went to technical marketing role, and I'm soon to be transitioning into another role dealing more with social media and community, which is ultimately what I guess I naturally do, is because I just meet and talk to people. But it really wouldn't be helpful or part of my life if it wasn't for a lot of the people in this room, like Letchin and Doug and Cody Bunch and Keith and Mark. I mean, I know at least 10 people in this room, personally.
I'm curious, has anybody in the recent past in this room gotten a job by sending a resume out to a blind address? Zero hands. Zero hands.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah, I don't believe you. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. So a room
That would be
full of,
Alessandro off stage.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Alessandro, GM of Cloud Strategy for Red Hat. Yeah, sent out a resume.
He's just blind, yeah.
I don't think so. That's interesting, right? So this is a room full of 40 senior technologists. Not one of us does anything like send out resumes. So.
Well, and the other thing I wanted to pull out from what Luigi said, I'm also curious, show of hands, or if you want to pass the mic to the next person, of how important mentors or that buddy system in terms of jumping into the community. Because I can imagine the amorphous concept of community could be difficult if you're the new kid at school, and who do you sit with, and where are the cool kids, and who do you eat lunch with, and all that sort of stuff. Did everybody have somebody kind of lead them into the community, or?
I had multiple people.
A couple hands?
Yeah, maybe tell us a story about that, I'm curious if anybody did it on their own as well and what that was like.
And please introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Patrick. I'm a sales engineer for Puppet Labs. This is my first sales engineer role, so I transitioned from a consulting role. And when I was applying for the job, I hunted down one of my friends who was a sales engineer, because as I mentioned last night, there's a dearth of good books on sales engineering. I haven't yet to find one that I've read and gone, that's the Bible that I need to share. So I hunted down one of my former colleagues and I said, can we have a cup of coffee? I need you to help me. I need a mentor. I need someone that can lead me through this. And he spent a few minutes with me and we had a cup of coffee. And he told me some stuff and I went off and I got the job and I started and then we had another cup of coffee. And it was only about 6 months into the role of a sales engineer that I realised how much he had given up. Like spending 15 minutes with me, there's a cost to that when you're a sales engineer because you've got a number.
Wow.
You're meant to be out there making money and you're taking time out of your day job to go and talk to someone that isn't going to make you any money. So I was very thankful for him doing that. And I mentioned earlier today someone approached me recently to see if I could help them. And I was like, first I was like, you're kidding. And then once they convinced me they weren't, I was like, okay, I will make the time because I want to pay it forward.
Yeah.
So I hope everyone in the room does that as well.
Very cool. So anybody else want a story about sort of joining the community, finding that mentor?
I'd like to jump in. So
Okay, tell us who you
I'm
are.
Alistair and long-time listener to the Geek Whisperers, first-time caller.
First-time caller?
First-time caller.
And I also wanted to add to your intro, as GS, who's not been able to stay with us for the whole day, said, just play the podcast at 1.3 or 2 times speed and the intros go much faster. So I live, as many of you know, in New Zealand, and it's a fairly small place full of sheep, and there's not a lot of virtualization community amongst the sheep.
I think that's bee wool.
So it's kind of funny how you look back and you see your mentor that was very informal from very early on. So the mentor that I actually had in this community is John. And he's been a much stronger mentor to me in the last 2 years than he was at the beginning. Yet the tiny bit of support right at the beginning made a vast difference to my career. So I used to be very focused on New Zealand and Australia and what happened there, and my reputation there was the most important thing to me. Now I don't do any work in New Zealand or Australia. I'm working for US-based companies and doing much more interesting, much more challenging work because this community, this group of people who just introduce to one another and help one another has opened those doors for me. And it just has completely shifted my perspective from being in a small town and outside a small city in a small country to now being very much global, and particularly guys like Cody as well, from starting the V Brown bag. He's somewhat embarrassed by being name-checked. From starting the V Brown bag and then the massive thing that has grown from this community that is V Brown bag. So the community has been huge for us.
And you bring up a really great point, because the conversation I've had here through the day is I don't live in the Valley. I live in North Carolina. And exactly to your point, the community changes. I just love that. It can transition you from being where you are. And I love Carl's point about give back where you are, be in that moment, but also that ability to connect to this larger community as well. That I never thought, as someone who grew up in rural North Carolina, that I would be able to travel the world and know people around the world and use the tools that technology affords to kind of maintain those relationships. But community really opens that door and cements those ties and changes your career opportunities. It's a very cool story. Anybody else? Anybody else want to? Can you run a microphone?
See if I can do this. So my name is Jack Poller. I'm currently an analyst for ESG, but
Yeah, mic
better?
training. I know, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't normally speak with a microphone. I can make my voice carry. I started out as an
Chris'
engineer.
laugh is better than mine. Come on, you're taking my gig.
I started out my life as an engineer, transitioned to operations and then marketing, and so I guess this is now my fourth career as an analyst. But I got started maybe 8 or so years ago with a friend of mine who couldn't make it here today, but I think most of you know Andy Banta, who was getting some external visibility as an engineer inside VMware. And I've known Andy for way too many years. And he invited me along basically to meet some people for dinner after VMworld. And that was sort of my introduction. And he sort of guided me into meeting a lot of people. And I think that was a very big help because myself, like I think probably 95% of the people here, is naturally an introvert. And I'm just as happy to sit back at a big table of people and listen rather than participate. And it was through somebody else who's got a very outgoing and open personality and who is able to engage people on a large variety of topics that sort of has brought me out and helped me be part of the community.
It's really powerful having somebody that improves your ability to socialize and also to recognize your preference. I mean, a lot of people get energy. Well, I'm somebody that gets energy from being around everyone, and I absorb that. And other people they may enjoy that, but they know that they get more energy from being by themselves. And recognizing what your preference is and balancing that out in a way that still gets you exposure to new people and new topics is very important.
Yes.
The interesting thing to me is the time scales. It operates on both a very short and a very long time scale. Like I joined VMware as like a temporary gig. Like I'm a year and I'm out, right? And it's turned into a 10-year relationships with some people. I think Alessandra, who is here tonight, who is speaking tomorrow morning. By the way, I switched your time to tomorrow morning, Alessandra. I've known for probably 10 years. One of the first people I met externally in my role at VMware. And other people, I'm on Facebook, I know their kids, I've seen them, shovel snow, I've seen them stuck in airports, right? It's a long-term relationship. And yet, there is this short-term thing where you go to VMworld or you go to a conference, with a friend or a mentor, you get introduced to people, and all of a sudden, very, very quickly, you are part. Most of these communities or sub-communities in here are very welcoming, right?
Yep.
And you can become part of a group very quickly, and you can get a hand up and a hand in and help very, very quickly as well, or a new gig or whatever.
Yeah, being handshaked into a relationship or an opportunity where you didn't anticipate it, but the opportunity was there simply because you were brought in by the right person at the right time with the right people, and you have the right skills.
Yeah.
And I love that all of these stories, the sort of connective tissue here is everybody took the chance, everybody took the hand that was extended. In some cases, we're hearing about there was a request made, but everybody took that leap of faith. And I think that can be difficult, no matter how well you know someone, to kind of have that leap of faith moment to go forward into a community you don't know. You know, I'm fairly on record of Brian Gracely is my first tech mentor. And, you know, the running joke at VMworld 2011 was, you know, I'd been to one tech conference. This was going to be my second one. My boss at the time was French. So naturally in August, what do? You if you're French? You leave the country.
Go to the beach, yep.
Yeah, you go on vacation. So he's like, I'm going to be on vacation. You deal with VMworld. And I'm like, total deer in the headlights. And Brian Gracely took pity and sort of saved me. I literally, he laughs now. He told me recently at this VMworld, I didn't know how little you knew until you started asking questions and, you know, like how long is the conference and when does it start in the morning and how does this all work? I mean, the ignorance knew no bounds. He gave me an opportunity, and it was a crazy one. We made a series of joke videos about you know, things,
training, right?
Things to go on at VMworld. Yeah, and they're still available, embarrassingly so, but we still kind of laugh about it. And I think that was the start. It began everything. It began Engineers Unplugged. It began me thinking video was a communications medium. It began with me thinking you could communicate differently. And it was really because of him. He's, you know, here's some people you need to meet. Here's a camera. Good luck. You know?
And there's also, if I could, I'll transition.
Yeah.
Because there's a topic that comes up naturally from that, which is really, what was that moment, that sort of pivot moment that you took a little bit of a leap, you jumped into something, you didn't really think much of it, but it's had a profound ramification later in your career. I think that's another really interesting topic for us. And
maybe John, you kick that off. I'm actually
please.
Wait, is that also something that we talked about this afternoon? Is it time for a report from this afternoon or that later?
We did talk about pivoting and.
I don't know. Lechen, is it time now or later? Later.
I think that's later.
Later. Okay.
It's your conference.
Pivot. Well, no, I'm trying to skillfully weave all these threads together in a way that people don't notice.
We're not there yet.
Okay.
I don't think
No,
we're there
I'm
yet.
sort of curious about that.
Okay, pivot
that
moment. Yeah. Okay, pivot moment. Sure. Well, I mean, a lot for me certainly it was joining VMware, right? And it was
absolutely.
unexpected consequences.
And how long were you there? Just for those playing the home game?
8 years and 9 months. Like a small child, I measured in partial years.
12 weeks.
But many of them, starting the VMware Communities podcast was a total fluke. It was like, I didn't even, on the very first podcast, I didn't know everybody's name. Like, I kept confusing Edward and a couple of, yeah, exactly. I confused a couple people's names. And so, but that turned into a campfire that gathered this community around week after week. But it was just done on a lark, and we just decided to do it. Yeah. The V-Experts, it was like, you know, Troyer is running around with the bloggers. Well, we really should call that a program, you know? I'm like, okay, boss, well, what kind of program should I do? It's like, I'll get like 20 of my friends together. Like, no, make it bigger. I'm like, okay, I'll make it bigger. But, you know, it turned into a thing. And a lot of this, I've just, you know, these pivot moments are also jumping in moments, right? Where you just try something. And I've had a lot of things that didn't work, too, right?
Did you know any of those moments were big moments when you had them?
Oh, no.
It's
not
reflection.
At all. Only in
retrospect,
way
right?
in retrospect. I mean, I kept doing them, so I guess I recognize that, you know, like you do the V Brown bags, you do whatever. We kept doing our podcast. We recognize that we like it.
It's not like you're touching the top of a stove and you're burning it. You're like, oh, actually, there's a lot of people clapping.
Let's do that again. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, you know, we'd do something and no one showed up, and we wouldn't do that again.
Sometimes there's neither a burn nor a clap, so you just let it go.
You know, this may indeed be another pivot moment. We'll see. This is the very first reckoning.
Well, and questions. I also want to sort of generate any questions. I know I've been asking you to share stories, but do people in the audience, anybody out there have any questions on this line, thoughts? Somebody?
Well, I really do want to know if anyone has stories where there is a moment that really sticks out now in retrospect, especially if you can think of it now.
I can answer that one. So I'm Mike Lechen.
Feel free to stand up.
Really? You need me to stand up?
Yeah.
Hi. Hi. So I've actually got probably two that jumped out. Both were because of John. PEX in 2011, when we decided that we were going to do the podcast and go to 4 different corners of a parking lot.
Well,
Because otherwise we kept hearing each other
right,
on
we
the
didn't have
phone.
microphones, so we were all dialing
We were
in
all
ourselves.
dialing in on our phones. And when you're standing beside each other with the delay on TalkShoe, it does not work at all.
I hope there's coverage, some photo coverage of this.
There
'cause
may
that's
be.
amazing.
We were completely different areas. That was one. And then a year later at VMworld, when we decided to do the first, or maybe 2 years later, the first VExpert Daily, that we decided to do just a quick little, hey, we'll do a little podcast in the beginning of VMworld every day. And just get the VExperts on and chat about it. And I had no idea that after a few conversations that we'll have this, that all of a sudden this was going to be something we were going to do over and over, and then Brown Bag pick it up and have it all day and have a stage at VMworld after us having a little corner in the
Yeah, Mike
community
just
side.
said, I want to do a panel. I'm like, okay, go, do it, schedule it.
Yeah, and it was
Sure.
literally a table half the size of this, if we were lucky.
But those are the moments that stick out.
Oh, for sure.
I have a personal one that in my first VMworld, after kind of connecting with some people, I actually didn't know either of these two just yet, only names on the Twitters. But I was having a beer with Mark Farley, who's sitting up here, and he said, you and I should make a podcast together. And I thought, I have no idea what you see in me, potential-wise, or why we should podcast. But yes, the answer is absolutely yes, because I have the utmost respect for you. And we did a podcast for a while, and it was pretty okay. and then at some point it stopped. But if it wasn't for that first moment of podcasting, I would be terrified when I had the opportunity to start podcasting with the two of you. And it's really one of those things where, like, I never would have guessed that I couldn't be here with that earlier experience, but they're interconnected. But saying yes has really been the theme, right? The ad-libbed
Yes,
career
and
path.
that
Yes,
is. And we just, again, on a podcast that it was just very meaningful for me when we were talking to Scott Lowe, that concept of jumping between on the trapeze and letting go of one and jumping to the other. And there is this moment. And we found that for all of us, and again, I reflect back and would love to hear from you all, that the most meaningful moments in some ways were that space in between. You know, you can safely go from one rung to the next, I suppose, but these little jumps, but the bigger leaps when you have to let go for a moment and have faith that the bar is coming back and you'll catch it.
Who has a story of a time when you had no idea what you were doing?
I love this. Yeah.
Keep your hands up. There are microphones for you.
Absolutely. All right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was not
Introduce
sure.
yourself.
Yeah.
All right, so
Feel free to stand up too. You gotta
Okay.
pick on everyone evenly.
hi everybody, Alessandro. So I believe it was in 2009, and I was running virtualization.info already. And so I got some popularity at that point, and there was this event manager in the US, Sean, and he was contracting with Microsoft, and he arranged this roadshow presenting Longhorn in very many different cities in US, something like 20 cities on bulk hosts, or even more, I don't remember. So he sent me an email and says, you are the expert, right? The unbiased expert in virtualization. We want you to present on stage. And he introduced us, and it was long roadshow, long session, like 3 hours. As a yes.
Wow.
And that was the most stupid thing I ever done in my entire life. And it was so stupid because at that time my English was just terrible. I mean, right now you can tell it's terrible, but at that time,
And you had to do 3 hours in each city.
at that time it was just unbelievable. I mean, it was just terrible. I mean, really terrible. Because I never taught a class in English, and I learned English by reading a lot of technical stuff over the years. And so my brain did this thing that was Italian language and then written English, but it was missing the third part, which was spoken English. Right? This is serious. You laugh, but it was a tragedy.
This is
right?
amazing.
It
Your
was a
misery is hilarious right now.
Well, all right. So I had a lot of words in my brain, but didn't know the sound of those words, right? And so it was really hard. But because I could write to a certain level of decency, I said, okay, this is not going to be a big deal. I need to expand. I need to go. This is a unique opportunity. I have to say yes. no, it was really bad. Idea. So I went there. On the way, it was my first flight to the US, and the night before the first event in the first city, I met with the entire crew that was arranging the event, so the event manager and all the stuff. It went out to dinner, and we were sitting in a nice place somewhere in Chicago, I don't even remember, in a table like this one. And there was one of the guys that was in the team, very nice guy, that was talking to me. And he wanted to, kind of break ice and be nice and make me comfortable. And so he started to talk to me, and I was not understanding a single word he was saying. No one. And clearly, I was nodding like an idiot. So he was asking me questions, saying things. I was nodding like, you're not recording this stuff, right? Right. And he was asking me a question and was nodding to everything, right? And at a point in time, he went very, very slow, and he said, if you don't understand what I'm saying, ask me to repeat, because if you just nod, you look like an idiot. That was the moment. He said in my interest. He was trying to protect my interest, trying to protect me. But it was the moment I realized, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. What am I doing here, right? I realized it was a very bad idea. So at that moment, I thought, okay, I'm totally not qualified to do this thing. It was absolutely the wrong idea. And I went back to my room. Back to my room, and the most brilliant idea I could come up with was to start repeating my session for the day after, right? I say, I can totally do this. I'm going to repeat all night, stay up all night if it's necessary, and I'll be ready to speak tomorrow on stage. It was another stupid idea because I had to talk for 3 hours, right? So even if you try to repeat multiple times, how many hours are per night? So there was no chance. And so the only thing I remember is that I ended up exhausted, sleeping on an armchair that was inside the room. And I say, tomorrow I am completely done, to not say another word that I already said. And that's what happened. And the day after, I went on stage, and I had, 300 people in front of me, waiting for me to say my things, and I was just completely frozen and not saying one word. It was a terrifying moment. And there was this guy that was at the very end of the room looking at me, say something, do something, right? And slowly, other people of the staff just went all the way down at the very end of the room. And everybody was looking at me like, oh my God, this is the end of the world because we have 20 cities. This is the first one, he's not talking. And he's the only speaker that I have, right? So we are completely done, right? So slowly, I managed to start my speech, and it went just horribly. It was just terrible. But I have to say, American people are very generous, and so they paid more attention to the content, what I was saying, rather than the way I was saying things. Right. And that was very, very powerful. And that is very different from many other countries I visited in the world. But American people are very, very generous from this standpoint. And so there was this guy, and I promise I will shut up after this. And there was this guy at the end of the presentation, this 3 hours, I was sweating. It was the end of the world for me. The event manager was kind of concerned because he said he wanted to be sure that the audience didn't go out on Twitter and say, this was the worst event I ever attended in my entire life, right? And so he tried to mitigate this thing, and he asked to the people in the audience what was their feedback about my presentation. And it was this guy, I will never forget, it was in the front row, front seat, and he said, well, I have to say that compared to the typical American speaker, you have an accent that is a little harder to follow. And so I paid more attention, and it was better, it was refreshing. I said, this guy is crazy, he's completely crazy. And that was the moment I really realized I didn't know what I was doing.
I feel like we should clap to that.
But I love the other moral here is you still went for it. And,
Yeah.
and
You didn't get on a plane back to Italy the next
no,
morning.
because there are a lot of people I think that would have simply panicked, gone, disappeared, never to be heard from again. So.
I gotta say, if I'm gonna take a plane tomorrow morning and disappear forever,
It was enough.
Yeah, and your
So-
career hasn't exactly sucked after that, so I'd say it worked out for the best.
It did.
Eventually.
Kong, please.
Kong Yang, SolarWinds head geek. So three things come up to me in my mind where I was at a point where I didn't know where I was going to go. So first, it was in 2009. A good friend, Scott Hansen, Mr. Cisco Server Geek, in there. He was the last man standing for DellTechCenter.com, right? So he was the only one left there. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to leave Dell because I'd done about 9 years, and I was like, I could stick here and be like one of those technologists who just comes to work every day, put in my time, and continue to rise, collect a paycheck, be unhappy with what I was doing with my career in there. And Scott gave me an olive branch. He gave me an opportunity, and he pulled me into Tech Center as the virtualization evangelist. And from there, I got to meet so many wonderful folks here, too many to name. But it was during that time that I met John at my second VMworld in there. And I remember thinking to myself, going to VMworld 2009, that meeting all these bloggers, it was like Roadhouse. You know that moment where it's like, Dalton, I thought he'd be bigger, And you start meeting folks, right? You start meeting like Nick Weaver, Linksbat, right? And you're like, oh, and then you'd be like Cody Bunch, and you're like, oh, that's what Cody looks like, and all these things. And I was like, I finally found my tribe. Well,
so awesome.
fast forward to 2014, and I'd figured I had enough of the big company, right? And I just needed a change. And I remember coming to that VMworld with an open mind. There were plenty of offers on the table, but I wasn't sure which way I wanted to go. And I remember running into John and Kat, and I really appreciated their time because they took time out to talk to me, help me walk through some of the scenarios, some of the things that were important to me. And I just spent that VMworld was the best to me because I had zero booth duty, and I just walked around with friends. So Todd Scalza, if you're watching this, listening to this, thank you. And thanks for talking about martinis and no vermouth and all this other stuff. Jay Weisshaker and Julia Weatherby, thank you for spending time with me, even though I was, just a friend walking through there. And the community embraced me during that. That's what I remember. I remember spending time with Todd Muirhead, Virtual Todd, in there, and Scott Hansen. So we went around going to parties. We did pint shot when we entered, and did the same when we left. We also got Zangati'd in there, and yes, definitely ask Jay and Julia what that means, because we still recall that. But that helped me decide to join a startup, because I always wanted to do that, but I was always risk averse, right? Like, should I take that step? Because hey, I have a family, I have 2 kids. Do I want to take that risk? And I was just at a point where I was like, I'm gonna do it. It's now or never, and did that. Best thing that happened to me, because I got to do so many wonderful things there. And then that also opened up the opportunity at SolarWinds, where I'm totally happy. But it was the community that opened up the doors. And I think the biggest thing that I took from the community is when you join the community, it is a community of friends, and use them as like a board of directors to help shape and get advice from.
Nice analogy.
That's
Love
a great, I love that. Great story. So, Mark, do you have we got a markup?
This will be short.
Oh, hold on one sec. Let's get you mic'd.
So one of the things that's interesting about this work, right, is that you might not...
Introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm Mark Farley, Go Farley. Thanks, Mark. Right?
Mark's been acquired by most of the the companies.
Yes.
In
One of the
country.
things that's interesting about this, right, is that you might not know what you're doing, and you'll find yourself in a group that doesn't know what they're doing, right? So, like at Dell, right? So Dell acquired EqualLogic, and I joined the social media group. I decided, let's go there, right? And so I wasn't sure what I was doing necessarily, and I got into this group at Dell, and I quickly figured out that they sure as hell didn't know what they were doing. But what was interesting, right, is they kept using the terminology it's like they get it or they don't get it. They get it or they don't get it, right? And there's this kind of judgmental thing that goes on. It's like, we don't know. It's the unspoken thing is that nobody pays attention to, is that nobody gets it, but they're talking about who gets it and who doesn't, which is a really interesting thing, right?
So the lesson is nobody really knows what's going on?
No, people do, right? People do. So the thing that's interesting about me, you might not know what you're doing, and you might be able to tell that the people that think they know what they're doing actually don't know what they're doing.
Oh, I met a lot of those.
There's a lot of that goes on, right? And we're getting better at this, but I think that what matters is that you figure out how to trust your instincts as best you can, and you bring your instincts to the community. And that's the thing that I saw, for instance, in you, Matt, and I've seen it in other people too, right? It's like, well, actually, I saw this in Matt, and it's like, Matt can be a lot better at this than I can, right? I like to just go offline, and I don't care if I go offline, and I'll just say, shit, I don't want to be a part of the community for a while, but Matt actually knows how to keep bringing it, right? And you see that in somebody, and you see, oh, you'd be actually good at this. Right, so we started this podcast, and I decided after a while, I can't stand editing these damn things. But Matt, Matt was able to keep going, right? So you can see somebody, and in the midst of all of this murkiness, where sometimes people don't know what they're doing and sometimes people do, I think if you trust your instincts, you can make it happen. I'll just say this to you, Patrick. Write that book, write those blog posts about what it's like to be a sales engineer. It needs to be done, right? It's still not done. Somebody needs to do it. Just freaking do it. And that's the other thing. Bring it. Bring your experience, communicate it, create a body of work. If you want to make something work in this community, create a body of work and get it done. And don't let anybody tell you no. And good things will happen. Just trust in that.
Yeah. Amen to
That's
that.
great.
You can just drop the mic at that point.
Yeah. Do we have anybody else? I know we saw a lot of hands there. I don't want to miss anybody who wants to talk about that transitional moment. Because I sort of have one other poll question as we're on this
while
topic.
we're waiting for those other volunteers, I just want to call out to the people listening on the live stream, because I know at least one of my buddies in Australia is listening. Hi, Sim. Thanks for the feedback.
Yeah, no, if anybody else is checking Twitter, if you're seeing any questions come in on Twitter for us, then somebody can speak those into the microphone as well. We might as well tear down all the walls. The other thing I'm sort of interested in, and I know we talked about today, is how many people are doing this improvisationally in terms of your career, and how many people are doing this intentionally? So sort of show of hands, and if, John, you'll do a rough count for us, because you're better at that than I am. So how many people are...
I'm an excellent driver.
Yeah, how many people are...
Very good driver.
Are planning intentionally? How many people have a 5-year plan or a plan of record? It can be written or at least well stated. How many people have a career plan that's intentional?
Where's Josh Atwell when you need him?
I know, that's exactly who I'm thinking. I'm blaming my ginger brother, Josh Atwell. Okay, we've got a...
Is this half dozen?
Yeah, absolutely, please.
No clarification.
Yeah.
I'd be more interested in how many people have had one and how well they stuck to it.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
I usually describe my career in the wonderful turn of phrase Australians often have. My career has basically been ass backwards. I keep falling into jobs and going, oh, this is fun, and do this. My career plan was not sales engineer. My career plan was completely different, but I'm perfectly happy where I am, but it doesn't match up with where I thought I'd be. So I'd be curious where everyone else stands on that.
Well, to be fair, she did just ask if you had a plan, not whether it worked out.
No plan of battle survives contact with the enemy.
Says the self-loathing marketer, yeah. So how many people then, the show of hands of people who've improvisational, you have sort of followed the two.
This is an improv room, 90%.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And the other thing that we got into in the table discussion that I'm really passionate about right now is the concept of pursuing your career for happiness. And the finding your next step based on that gut instinct like you're talking about, and what made you happy. And I
And
wonder,
also balancing travel,
Yeah.
paycheck, title, all that sort of stuff, right?
so
It's
so
really
does
summed up well by happiness. It's such a basic concept that we seem to like invalidate. You're like, wait, I can't quantify it and I can't necessarily hire for it, so it must not be valid. But in fact, happiness is.
can you measure it?
Yeah, that's our insight.
Metrics versus gut. The war
Yeah,
continues.
yeah.
Who wants to share a story? Does somebody have a story of you pursued something, maybe improvisational, great, and then it led to maybe even unexpected happiness, or maybe you intentionally pursued happiness? So Keith, tell us who
Keith
you are.
Townsend as CTO advisor. Excuse the hat, I'm having a bad hair day.
That for people who didn't know, that was from Ahmad, the memeable Ahmad Yunus.
Who has a shaved head. But anyway, go ahead.
We have a similar hairstyle.
Same barber.
So last year, I announced on Twitter that I was quitting my job. Just, the Geek Whisperers inspired me to quit my job.
We're so sorry.
We're gonna get
out. It's okay.
My wife wanted to FaceTime me and say, show me these people. But last year around this time, actually, I was a management consultant, or right before this time, we're going on about a year. And great job, worked for Big Four, nice prestigious position. I was meeting with C-level executives, senior vice presidents of Fortune 50, Fortune 500 companies. Really great position. Great thing for somebody with my background to have fallen into. But I wasn't happy. I think I shared that I spent more time doing pivot tables and finding the right color of blue on a PowerPoint than solving problems. So I quit my job and announced on Twitter that I was looking for a job. Interesting results was that a bunch of my vendor friends said, hey, come work for a vendor. And I thought about it and I said, you know what, working for a vendor would probably be a lot like what it was to work for a management consulting company. I wouldn't be happy. It ended up lucking into, so I thought I would find a job through social media. Ended up, I fell into a job as a good old-fashioned architect with a customer company. Gives me plenty of opportunity to come and do stuff like this and enjoy what I really like doing.
That is so awesome, and I love that. Might be our first angry spouse story.
Probably not our last.
Anybody else want to share kind of a story of your pursuit of career happiness? Something that you did that was maybe unexpected, or thoughts? Okay, we've got someone.
Hi, everyone. I'm Karen Lopez. I work for myself, which is what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow. So how that came about is kind of interesting in that I had started my career as a big bad defense consultant in the US, and that meant I worked for big companies that had big billable rates, and I was just a little cog 27 contracts down from the actual client, literally. 27 contracts between me and the people I worked for.
Wow.
There's money in that, by the way. So I did that, and then I got kind of tired of being a defense consultant and not really feeling like I got anything done. So I worked for a smaller consulting company based in LA, and it was a beach company, and that was all great. 30 people, got all kinds of experience. And they started sending me to Canada, and I thought, but I live at the beach.
It's cold here.
Yeah. But I fell in love with Canada, and I really liked the project I was on. And that small little company went out of business because they sent everyone to Canada instead of the beach. And then it came to be a time, and my client said, so you need to find another company to work for so you could keep working here. And I thought, well, or I could just keep all the money myself. But I never wanted to be an independent. I never wanted to own a business. I never wanted to have employees. I thought I would be miserable. And it turns out this was the happiest thing that ever happened to me in the world, is that being independent was exactly what I wanted. but probably because of the experience I'd had working for a big bad defense consulting, then a small consulting company, and then I was ready. I just didn't know I was ready until it just.
Well, what pushed you over? Did you have a mentor? What was your moment in time as you look back?
The moment of time was if I didn't go independent or find another company, I had to go home to Los Angeles, which wouldn't be awful, but you have a work permit and you got to either work for that client or go home. So it was just busy on the project, and I didn't want to give away 25-50% of my rate. I just thought, well, I'll just keep that. And then it turned out to be a side benefit of I enjoyed having a business of my own. And so that was one of those examples of literally the floor fell out beneath me and I thought I was falling. And instead, that was just a whole system of constraints that I didn't even realize I had. And it was just amazing that it happened to me.
And Carrie, I'm curious, have you since hired people and become the thing you were worried you would become? Or have you stayed independent
not really.
as an individual?
Small numbers of people, depending on projects, and now my husband works for me. I'm not sure he's happy
well
about
done.
that.
Well done.
I
But
thought
there's
every
that.
husband works.
I work for my wife. CEO.
Yeah,
CEO.
exactly. So it was just an amazing thing that happened, and
Brilliant.
you could get all cliche about it, but I was happy.
Very cool.
Yeah, the shackles you didn't know you had until you were kind of forced to take a risk. That's
And that great leap analogy there again.
Yeah.
Of not knowing you'll land, but landing happier than you were before.
So I want to add to this, and please forgive me of using the fact that the mic's in my hand as I'm passing it around. I was actually really fortunate. I just realized I had yet another mentor. My lawyer at the time, as we're doing sort of estate planning with my wife, said to me, I can't believe that guys like you aren't contractors. And this is when I was working for a solutions company. I was a senior solutions architect or some other similar title for a tiny little fly spec solutions company in my hometown. And he said, I can't believe that you're not a contractor. And then he said, if you were made redundant tomorrow, could you make a go of it as a contractor? And this is exactly the position, right? And I said, yeah, of course I could make that go. So the next thing he said to me was, why don't you do it now? Why wait to be made redundant? And
I love this, the gravitas of coming from an estate planner. I mean, that's the sort of,
yeah, this is my lawyer who's thinking about my children's welfare when they're 19. And thankfully, it's not long until the oldest one is 19. But this is one of the things that, Amy, one of your top questions is what would you tell people not to do? And a lot of the time it is wait. Don't wait. Go make that jump. Have the confidence, particularly if you're in the audience who are here in the room or listening online. You're the kind of pivoting, make the change person. Go and do it. Have the confidence and leap. And as John's found, if you have the confidence, at the last minute, everything will come together.
Well,
Don't tell any of my secrets, Alistair.
Well, and don't tell your spouse the Geek Whisperers pushed you.
Alistair
also work for
says,
my
quit
wife.
your job tomorrow.
Oh, shit. Gotta move.
No, I actually think that's really powerful. It is my favorite question, and you beat me to the punch there of, I think that's inspiring, though. I think I kind of got the little chill bumps there of don't wait. I think so often we either research it to death or we're unsure. And is anybody in the room, I mean, we've made mistakes, but none that is not recoverable. And
Yeah, I was probably a couple years too long at VMware, which is, I waited too long. But it's okay. It's okay. It's still good.
Yeah, and then the fear you overcome, then you're immediately kind of, oh, this is interesting on the other side. Yeah. So any other thoughts or questions on that topic of happiness? Oh, great.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kurt. I just had one thing to add, actually, on the topic of happiness. This is something I didn't mention when I was up there, but at the time that we first started the Hidden Genius Project, I was close to a dark place in my life because I had started this company that I'd been thinking about starting since 2004, and after 3 years of making a go at it, we raised some money, all kinds of other things, but long story short, it didn't quite work out. And it had been like the one thing I'd ever wanted to do in my life. And so, it wasn't working out, and that was that. And then I was basically sitting on my butt for a little while just trying to figure out what to do next. And this thing came up, and we were like, hey, yeah, we should do this. And I didn't have anything else to do at the time. So, I took on 40 hours a week with this, actually more like 60 or 70. But it turned into the thing that repaired my soul, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense.
And now, at the time, I was mildly interested in doing something from a social perspective, but it wasn't necessarily on my list of things to do immediately. And now, almost every project that I'm involved in needs to have some kind of social bent. Even the stuff I'm doing at Built.io, we're going to be working with some nonprofits inside of there starting. In fact, we've been doing it ever since I started, and even before that. And so it's actually completely changed my life. Like, those kids actually repaired my soul and forced me in another direction that initially I wasn't planning on going in.
Wow, that's really special, Kurt. Yeah, because I think there's this falsehood that we think that if we're unhappy with our work or in our career, then the problem is isolated to our work or to our career, and we need to fix that, and we need to try harder, put more hours into the week into our career, when really just recognize that happiness comes from a lot of different places, and in pretty much all of us, it's a diversity of places. We're all nerdy to some degree, whether you're in tech or you're really into books or some sort of science or something. We all have nerdy conventions, or we probably wouldn't be in this room right now. But that's not just what we are. That there's something about connecting with other people and not forgetting that can repair not just your sense of compassion and engagement with other people, but it can make you more happy with what you're doing in your job.
Well, and also that you can try and maybe not get the outcome you want initially. You can try and fail and not come apart, and you can go on. And I love that prepare your soul kind of concept. I think people become so afraid that we'll be remembered for what we did wrong. That in truth, like, there are moments, we all stumble, we've all stumbled publicly, but people remember so much more what you did right 9 times out of 10. And if you don't go out and try something, if you're too afraid to try and fail, you're probably too afraid to try. And I think about even us as we started this podcast. I was thinking about the morning we had this conversation. I just remember was driving to meet somebody for coffee. I've got the headset in, we're talking. We finally found a time. The three of us are it just came together, and we were like, just start. We just started. And we've had episodes that worked and didn't work, and we've hung up on ourselves and made fools of ourselves in front of important people. And we just kind of kept going, and we pivoted the podcast ourselves and thought, hey, we're going down one path, and let's go this other direction. And
well, yeah, no one, in terms of pivot stories, real quick, we probably should close it soon. We were going to talk about marketing and social media, and probably I think we still have that all over the website or something. But it turns out
website fail.
Marketing and social media, and it turns out the marketers didn't really want to hear it. Like, the marketers were not receptive to our message.
Their babies were cute, and us calling their babies less than cute.
Yeah,
that didn't work out.
And the geeks were the ones that were listening, so we're like, well, if the geeks were the ones who were interesting, and the geek stories are the ones that kind of engage us, let's switch over to geek stories, and that's where we.
This American Life for Geeks instead of fighting with the marketers.
They're just, I don't know, our marketing brethren and sistren. I don't know.
They think we're cute. They pat us on the head, but
that is true. They don't really. I don't know. Anyway, that's a conversation we'll have next over beers.
But what I glean from that is really that what we were happy doing in our day job, the people we were happy surrounding ourselves with at conferences, is what brought us back together and brought us back to a center that actually makes it more engaging to listen and to be part of it, because we're happy talking to you and hearing your stories and helping amplify them and tell them.
Some of the happiest moments of the last decade, I have many. I use the word, I like inside VMware in meetings to use words, in marketing meetings to use the word love, because it kind of makes people uncomfortable. And so I talk about love, and I talk about community, and there's just many moments over the last decade when I would wake up in the morning and pick up my phone and not even look at my Twitter, not my mentions, but look at my stream and look at what everybody's doing, and the brilliance of people and the things that they were giving back and the projects and just like the morning, that morning expression of what everybody was doing. And I would sit and look out my bedroom window, which opens up to our backyard and the trees, and I just overcome. I get a little teary. I would weep because of the love that I have for this group of people and of humanity and what we can do. And so I'm going to shut up now. But don't forget to connect to that feeling of connectedness and of love and of caring for each other, because that's really part of what we were all talking about here tonight.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, how do you top? No, I dropped the mic.
Yeah. No, it leads back to the happiness that we pursue in our careers and around our careers that will amplify all of us. And pursue that this week. I'm so used to week-long conferences. Pursue that in the next 24 hours because we're on a time limit here.
1.5 speed.
1.5 speed. Connect with people, whether you know them or maybe you assume you know them. You've seen them on Twitter. You've talked to them in person once or twice. Spend a little bit more time than you normally would asking them questions and learning from them and teaching them as well and being open to that experience and remembering to be happy and engaging.
Yeah, there will be new people coming tomorrow. We're going to have a bigger crowd, and we've left lots of open spaces in the schedule for precisely that reason.
And I was going to say thank you to all of you who have listened and supported, who asked questions, who shared your stories here. As the Geek Whisperers, we all have had great careers. This is a side project for us. It is truly one of our happiest moments. Like, just so you guys know, when we podcast together, it has been an amazing experience for all of us. Just to thank you, Matt, and thank you, John, for that opportunity. But when we hang up with our guest, we really are just so excited to hear your stories, to hear your questions, to have that opportunity for you to let us into your lives and to share. It's been unbelievable. It's been a crazy run, and we're just really grateful for it every single time. It's not anything we do except for the love of it. Speaking of love, and we really do. It's an amazing gift. So thank you.
With that, that's been another week of the Geek Whisperers. I think let's call it a day. Thank you all.